are some who say he is only a myth. Soon they will discover the Phantom is real.
Who doesn't love a good superhero tale? Being an integral part of American culture, costumed assailants have been a part of American history since 1936, February 17th in particular, where Lee Falk's The Phantom would appear in a newspaper comic strip, following the story of Kit Walker, who would become the first superhero ever made. His remarkable purple design, black mask, and whiteout eyes would prove trailblazing for characters like the Batman, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and so many more. I know you might be a little confused, even I was. The Phantom was certainly a character I had no recollection of prior to preparing for this video. By 1938, however, a more familiar character would be introduced to comic book readers.
Faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound, the infant of Krypton is now the Man of Steel, Superman!
Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster's Superman, first appearing in Action Comics #1 on April 18th of 1938, would become the most iconic superhero of all time. While the footage I just showed was from a 1941 animated series, Superman was a hit far before then, dominating in popularity in his first appearance in 1938, which carried over into the 1940s decade, where his popularity wouldn't be challenged until the 1950s. Those that challenged him? Batman and Wonder Woman. As the years went on, comic book readers would be introduced to heroes like Captain Marvel, The Flash, Captain America, Aquaman, Supergirl, the Fantastic Four, the Hawk, Spider-Man, and so much more. Stan Lee and Steve Ditko's Spider-Man would be another character that would become an instant icon after appearing in Amazing Fantasy number 15 in 1962. By 1963, with the release of the Amazing Spider-Man comic book, he would become a solidified cultural icon. You know, it's funny comparing the look of these two shows. While they both look really nice for the time period they debuted in, the use of Technicolor in Max Fleischer's Superman is insanely unmatched. Seriously, why does Technicolor look so magical? Anyways, with the amazing collection of heroes appearing in pop culture from respected companies like Marvel Comics, Dark Horse Comics, Milestone Comics, and Detective Comics, or DC Comics, which could also mean Detective Comics. Yeah, well, nonetheless, none would have expected the next phase of superhero storytelling would come from Pixar in 2004, with arguably their greatest film ever made. It was only a matter of time before I knew I was going to talk about my favorite animated movie. Written and directed by Brad Bird, The Incredibles is a timeless classic that till this day I believe is Pixar at its best. Before we dive too deeply into this video, please like and share the video if you're enjoying it so far, and hit that subscribe button if you're new, as it is greatly appreciated. Now, given that this movie came out in 2004, I was likely 2 years old, turning 3 at the time, and I strangely have no idea when I saw it for the first time. Like, I've spent days trying to recall when I first saw it, but I'm just gonna assume I saw it sometime before I turned 10 years old because my memories get real foggy at that point. Regardless, this film stuck with me like it has so many others. Maybe it was my love for superheroes, the really cool powers, the art direction, or even the Parr family alone. Perhaps it was all those things. I mean, this was Pixar's first film to star human characters. Their past human characters were mostly background characters. Think Andy's mom or Sid from Toy Story. But this achievement became the catalyst for the majority of Pixar's latest films when they utilized subsurface scattering, a procedural code that allows light to penetrate and bounce off of skin surfaces, creating a more 3D look rather than a flatter, plastic look. Like, look at the differences between Helen and Andy's mom. While the evolution of computer graphics was bound to happen, especially with Toy Story being Pixar's first feature film, I still wanted to point out how awesome their efforts were. And the fact that their films look like this now? Like, dude, these people are so inspiring. Nonetheless, something about The Incredibles felt personal. This became all the more clear when learning more about the film's director.
And that if you can aim at, if you make films that assume that people are smart, you're going to wind up with, I think, a longer lasting body of work.
Being a traditional animator, Brad Bird would have a pretty eventful experience before arriving at Pixar. Like so many hungry artists out there, Brad spent much of his early career stuck in what he would call developmental hell, finding himself in a repeated cycle of being hired for projects and later being out of work, as keeping a comfortable position in the animation pipeline is especially difficult. He worked on shows like King of the Hill and The Simpsons as an executive consultant, but what he dreamed of accomplishing was much bigger: a feature film. Traditional animation in particular, as it is very personal for him.
I miss hand-drawn animation, and the imperfections are sometimes more perfect because they come out of an emotion. I think it would be a big loss if people stopped making films by hand.
I couldn't agree more. Thankfully, his dreams would come true in 1999 with the release of The Iron Giant.
What are we looking at here, Mr. Manley?
This is no meteor. This is something much more serious.
Invaders from Mars.
While the film was a critical success, it unfortunately did horrible numbers at the box office, grossing only $31.3 million worldwide on a $50 million budget. Just soul-crushing. It coming out in '99 at a point where 2D animation was still popular was kind of shocking at first. That is, until I saw that Tarzan came out 1 month before it, and Tarzan did really well, being the 5th highest grossing film in 1999 and the 2nd highest grossing animated film behind Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2 came out months after The Iron Giant, so perhaps Tarzan played a bigger part in its box office failure than Toy Story did, since their release window was much thinner. Which, if a 2D animation film is going to fail at the box office, I guess I'm glad it was another 2D animated film that might have caused it, rather than a 3D one. Oh, I can't believe I forgot. The Phantom Menace coming out 2 months prior to it, people's wallets were getting milked in 1999. I mean, what a year for theaters. But I digress. Seeing as 2D animation was so important to Brad Bird, I know he must have felt awful about its box office failure. Luckily, he was about to change the trajectory of his career. Due to his relationship with John Lasseter, as the two of them hailed from the California Institute of the Arts, Brad Bird was presented with an opportunity by Lasseter to bring his creativity to Pixar. Man, I feel like I've said John Lasseter in every video. The man's a legend. But anyways, this was a big deal for Brad, as he had the idea of The Incredibles for a long time. In fact, The Incredibles was floating around his mind before he ever even thought of The Iron Giant. For him, his frustration with how his career was going early on, plus him wanting to be sure he was a good father to his children, was a major influence on the story of Bob Parr, aka Mr. Incredible, and the overall Incredible story in general. Now that we're all caught up on the history of this film, let's get to the point of the video. Much of my inspiration for this video comes from trying to understand the powers of the Parr family and its relation to their characteristics. Of course, it's not too complicated to get, but we're going to break it down anyways. Partially because we're going to have to talk about Jack Jack, which might require some Incredibles 2 talk. Maybe I'll hold off on that, we'll see. But that officially concludes the longest intro to a video on my channel. With that, let's discuss The Incredibles and the powers of family ties. Let's start this off right. It'd be easy to discuss Bob first, but we'll start with my all-time favorite speedster, Dash, instead. We first see Dash in the principal's office. He's in trouble for something, but at the moment we have no idea what for, as his teacher comes off pretty crazy.
Bernie.
Don't Bernie me! This little rat is guilty!
It took a couple takes for me to notice, but if you look closely, you do actually see Dash use his super speed. This was a great way to hint at his abilities, but an unfortunate situation for the teacher. During the car ride home, we learned that Dash has had repeated visits to the principal's office. Helen, who reveals that this dude's name is Dashiell Robert Parr, essentially tells him to find a hobby. That's when we learned that Dash wants to get into sports, but because of his competitive nature, Helen thinks that isn't a great option for him. But here's when we get a glimpse into Dash's inner turmoil.
You always say, do your best, but you don't really mean it. Why can't I do the best that I can do?
He's passionate about wanting the freedom to use his abilities. And even though Helen means well, it's not easy to convince Dash when he's being told this by Bob.
But Dad always said our powers were nothing to be ashamed of. Our powers made us special.
Helen tells him that everyone is special, but of course, Dash views this as no one being special at all. We start to see that his bond with Bob is far stronger than with Helen's. At the dinner table, when Bob is told about Dash's visit to the office, Bob is excited to learn that Dash was able to avoid being caught on tape due to his speed.
They caught you on tape and you still got away with it? Whoa! You must have been booking. How fast do you think you were going?
We are not encouraging this.
These conflicting ideologies can be confusing, not only for Dash, but even Violet. While Bob may have genuinely been excited to learn about how fast Dash was, as we've seen him get excited about the kid's powers multiple times, Helen was right to say that Bob was encouraging Dash in this situation because there are laws against supers, and not helping Helen get Dash to understand that isn't helping. Dash later says that Jack Jack is lucky to be normal.
The only normal one is Jack Jack, and he's not even toilet trained.
Lucky. Oh, I meant about being normal.
Well, I hope he was referring to that, but assuming he is, I think this further expresses how much he truly wants the freedom to take on sports, powers or not. The rest of the iconic dinner scene that we are in no way done with would be the first time we see Dash use his speed. By the way, Dash and Makari might just be the standard for speed CGI in film. Like, it's incredible. Bruh, I'll try not to let that happen a lot. Later in the film, Dash and Violet are spying on Bob and Helen as they argue about Bob's bowling night with Lucius. During this argument, Dash is mentioned. Helen reveals that Bob is missing key family moments.
And you are missing this. I can't believe you don't want to go to your own son's graduation.
Bob undermines it, bruh. Devalues it, calling it mediocrity.
But if someone is genuinely exceptional,
This is not about you, Bob. This is about Dash.
You want to do something for Dash? Then let him actually compete. Let him go out for sports.
I will not be made the enemy here. You know why we can't do that.
Because he'd be great!
Look, I was a bad kid in elementary school, but I think this provides more clarity to Dash's visits to the principal's office. He's influenced by Bob, and a lot of their confrontations with Helen have similar talking points, and all those points seem to revolve around the idea of freedom. As mentioned earlier, the relationship he has with his parents shows that he's much closer to Bob, and his relationship with Helen is rather strained, because while Bob says pretty much all he wants to hear, Helen is providing him with the truth of the world he lives in. With Dash being a child, it's hard for him to see that at the moment. That all changes once they arrive on Nomonison, Syndrome's island. After being shot down from their jet, Helen plans to have Dash use his powers for the first time, even telling him she's proud of him when he does, in which Dash says thanks. Finally, it seems the two of them are developing a stronger relationship. Who says almost dying won't bring loved ones together? Well, when Helen gives Dash and Violet the most real and honestly relatable warning ever.
Remember the bad guys on those shows you used to watch on Saturday mornings? Well, these guys are not like those guys. They won't exercise restraint because you're children. They will kill you if they get the chance.
Is when Dash and Violet are finally given the green light to use their abilities. This leads us to the 100-mile dash. Reading about this in the Incredibles art book was so cool, dude. But the 100-mile dash wasn't just some chasing, it was Dash's character progression. He finally got to run freely, which made this moment all the more fantastic. I tell you, man, you could not convince me I wasn't Dash when I was a kid, and it was likely because of that moment. I love that Dash finally got a better understanding of what Helen had been drilling into him though. It was never about her wanting to hide his abilities, it was about keeping him and the family as a whole safe. Of course, she would have her character progression as well, but we'll get to that. By the end of the movie, Dash finally got to take on sports.
Slow down just a little bit. Don't give up. Make it close. Second play. Close second. Yeah.
This was an awesome moment, seeing Dash cross the finish line and win the silver, while simultaneously wearing a shirt with number 2 on it was hilarious. Ultimately, Dash's energetic nature and desire for freedom to be himself made his powers being that of speed so appropriate. That's all, Dash.
Well, not that this isn't fun, but I'm gonna go look around.
As a kid, I never would have expected I'd relate to Violet the most. I am an introvert. Regardless, we see Violet for the first time at her high school. Here she's looking at her crush, Tony Ridinger. And so this is what the girls were into back in the early 2000s, huh? Hey man, I won't judge. Anyways, we actually see her invisibility powers far more directly in comparison to Dash's power reveal. We see that she's a rather shy character.
looked at me.
Likely a loner, as throughout the film I don't remember her having a friend. At the dinner table, Violet seems disconnected from everyone else.
So, how about you, Vi? How was school?
Nothing to report.
You've hardly touched your food.
I'm not hungry for meatloaf.
Violet is reserved here, instead choosing to keep whatever had been bothering her to herself. You know, typical teenager stuff.
Gotta be tough! Stop coming in the house!
Due to her reserved nature, it makes sense that she'd have force field abilities. But after her squabble with Dash, do we get a better understanding of her character?
Now, it's perfectly normal.
Normal? What do you know about normal? What does anyone in this family know about normal?
Now, wait a minute, young lady.
We act normal, Mom. I want to be normal. The only normal one is Jack, and he's not even toilet trained.
Jack is hilarious, man. But in all seriousness, we start to see the possible depressive state Violet is in. Granted, I'm not a psychiatrist, but given that she already feels different, I'm sure her parents fighting is another problem that only makes her feel worse.
It's not about you!
All right, Dash. I know you're listening. Come on out.
Vi, you too, young lady.
Come on. Come on out. It's okay, kids. We're just having a discussion.
Pretty loud discussion.
Yeah.
This may seem like a minor thing at first, but she'll mention something later that will make this point relevant again. But we'll get to that. I should say though, before they head off to the island, Helen does mention that Bob is either in trouble or he's going to be. When you look at Violet's face, you can see her concern. Now here's the thing, during the jet scene where Syndrome's missiles are tracking them, Helen tells Violet to put a force field around the plane. Then Violet says,
You said we weren't supposed to use our powers!
I know what I said! Listen to what I'm saying now!
Now sure, it's easy to be like, Violet, the hell are you talking about? Just make the damn force field. But you gotta remember that the story takes place 15 years after the golden age of heroes. Violet is 14, Dash is 10, and Jack is 1. Oh, they really were getting busy. But anyways, Helen has likely been telling Violet the same things we talked about with Dash. Anyone can be introverted or reserved for any reason, but perhaps this is something Violet was affected by, which might be why she thinks she isn't normal. But back to the plane scene. Helen really lost her marbles in this scene because how and in what way did she think Violet would be able to put an entire force field around the plane when she's been telling her to conceal her powers for years?
Put a field around us now! I've never done one that big before! Do it now!
Abort!
Loki felt really bad for Violet. This wouldn't be the first time Helen would snap at her, but seeing Violet go from being able to make a relatively large force field in the dinner scene to barely even being able to make a cup-sized force field was sad to see. Granted, it wasn't all on Helen. Stress definitely played a huge factor, but this scene damn near made me want to write a tragic character video for Violet. I mean, look at her in this shot. She probably feels so, I don't know, worthless? It was a tough series of events for Violet. I mean, what else could you possibly do to her?
And if anything goes wrong, use your powers.
But you said never to
I know what I said!
Okay, I probably would have snapped too. Like, Jesus, Vi, catch up. Nonetheless, it was nice to see them talk about it.
You have more power than you realize. Don't think. And don't worry. If the time comes, you'll know what to do. It's in your blood.
You can tell Violet needed that. And there was a moment that boosted her confidence throughout the rest of the film. You know why? Because of freedom, baby! Honestly, that's what the title of this video should be. But anyways, Violet, just like Dash, being given the go-ahead to use her powers freely, gave her a whole new set of confidence. Of course, it was a matter of life and death, but seeing as though she's often trusted by Helen to take leadership roles when she's not there, I love seeing her make tough decisions in tense moments later in the film.
How are you doing that? I don't know! Whatever you do, don't stop!
Hold on, back up a bit. Remember I mentioned Violet being concerned about her parents' relationship?
Mom and Dad's lives could be in jeopardy. Or worse.
Their marriage. Their marriage?
It may have been an overreaction on both mine and her part, but if you look at it in my way, it makes this scene even better.
I love you.
Whoa.
Ultimately, Violet was locked in for the rest of the film, making some really good saves, showing she learned from that tense moment on the jet. While I do wish Violet got a little more attention in the film, every moment she was showcased in was pretty great. Oh, and how could I forget? She hit Tony with the shush. You talk too much.
Yeah?
Do you think maybe you and
Yeah?
do you know?
I like movies. I'll buy the popcorn.
Keep on keeping on, Violet.
Tony Ridinger.
Shut up.
Well, you are.
I said shut up, you little insect.
When it comes to Jack Jack, not much to say about the little guy, but a question stems from my rewatch of both The Incredibles and Incredibles 2 that I guess I should bring to y'all. So throughout the film, I don't remember being given a clear reason as to how supers got their powers, which honestly makes the film even better for two reasons. It brings mystery to this universe, and it means the writers cared more for the characters than they did the powers. That in particular made the world of The Incredibles that much more realistic and grounded, in far more ways than just having every superhero be a murderer, like in some franchises. Shout out to the boys though, I still enjoyed it. But Jack Jack is described in the art book as the wild card, having no known powers, rather just unformed potential. So what's my question? I guess it's, in this universe, are powers shaped by personalities and traits? The obvious answer is yes. I mean, even Lucius's cool nature makes sense in relation to his freezing powers. But I only wonder if Jack Jack has so many powers because he's only a baby. Once he gets older and develops more personal characteristics, is there a chance many of those powers will be limited down to one or two? I guess we'll see in The Incredibles 3. Of course, looking at the first two movies, we were never given the impression that Violet and Dash were like this when they were babies. So perhaps Jack Jack is really just finna be God in this universe. Hey, I won't complain, but sorry Jack Jack, we're supposed to be focusing on the first movie, and even though you got kidnapped, dude, there ain't much character progression for me to talk about.
He's not even toilet trained.
Lucky.
The first time we see Helen was actually in an interview at the beginning of the film, while she was in her Elastigirl persona. In this absolutely awesome sequence of shots, we actually see that Helen and Bob were the exact opposite of the kind of people they are now.
Settle down, are you kidding? I'm at the top of my game. I'm right up there with the big dogs. Girls, come on. Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so. I don't think so.
It's funny, throughout this video, I've been realizing more and more why they went with the story they did in The Incredibles 2. They just sort of flunked it, but let's stay on track. We see that Helen was all about that hero life in the beginning, and while it's clear that she loved being Elastigirl, we quickly learned that for her, there is more to life than just being a hero.
I love you, but if we're gonna make this work, you gotta be more than Mr. Incredible. You know that, don't you?
So long as you both shall live.
I do.
Unlike Bob, Helen has adapted to this new life she has. Even though they've constantly had to relocate due to Bob's antics in the past, it's clear she has a strong mentality that keeps the family glued. We see that in her conversation with Dash in the car.
Right now, honey, the world just wants us to fit in, and to fit in, we just gotta be like everybody else.
And at the table, she even tries to get Violet to open up to her.
So, how about you, Vi? How was school?
Nothing to report.
Speaking of the dinner scene, you see Helen struggle to get Bob to discipline Dash.
Dash got sent to the office again.
Good. Good.
No, Bob, that's bad.
What?
Dash got sent to the office again.
What? What for?
With Bob not doing much to aid her, we realize that Helen is a lot more involved with the kids than Bob is.
Do not shout at the table. Honey?
Kids, listen to your mother.
The responsibility is left to her, so it's clear to understand why it's hard for her to keep the kids in order.
You sit down! You sit down! You'll pay for that! Ow!
After she confronts Bob about the burning building, as mentioned, we learn that they've blown cover before.
Darn you, we can't blow cover again.
The building was coming down anyway.
What? You knocked down a building?
It's hard not to get Helen's frustration here. I mean, for her, it's like talking to a child. She probably feels as though she's the only one to grasp their situation. Bob realizing that, which has an effect on the kids, makes it all the more difficult.
This is about Dash.
You want to do something for Dash? Then let him actually compete. Let him go out for sports.
I will not be made the enemy here. You know why we can't do that.
Again, how frustrating for Helen must this be? While Dash deserved the freedom to race, it's unfair to Helen for Bob to throw that in her face as if they haven't blown cover before. For Helen, she's just becoming more and more cautious, and you can't blame her for that. Regardless of how difficult it's been for Helen to keep Bob focused, she gives him a lot of grace. I think she understands how much the old days meant to Bob, and it helps their relationship through the ups and downs.
I don't mean to be.
I know you miss being a hero, and your job is frustrating, and I just want you to know how much it means to me, that you stay at it anyway.
Once Bob lies to her about his job promotion, we see that things have improved in regards to their relationship. They both seem rather happy, but when Helen suspects that Bob is having an affair, everything begins to fall apart for them again.
Have a great trip.
Thanks, sweetie. I'll call you when I get there.
I love you so much.
I love you too.
When she realizes that Bob has had his suit repaired by Edna, Helen heads there to uncover the truth. To Helen's surprise, Edna has prepared amazing suits for the entire Incredibles family. Bob's mysterious job is now being uncovered.
The number that I have is no good.
Mr. Parr no longer works at InsureCare.
What do you mean? He's on a business trip. A company retreat.
My records say his employment was terminated almost 2 months ago.
This comes alongside the chrono scene, and man, the cinematography is awesome.
So you don't know where he is? Would you like to find out?
Helen breaks down, feeling as though she failed their relationship, but is quickly reminded of who she is.
You are Elastigirl! My God, pull yourself together! What will you do? Is this a question? You will show him you remember that he is Mr. Incredible, and you will remind him who you are.
This worked because now Helen was on a quest to find Bob. This dude Bob was obsessing over the wrong things, man. But anyways, the two of them reunite. It was looking spooky for Bob at first.
She was helping me to escape.
No, that's what I was doing. Let go of me. Let go, you lousy, lying, unfaithful creep.
How could I betray the perfect woman?
But after kicking some bad guy butt, do they find themselves on the same page again. Later in the film, they arrive back to the city, and finally both Bob and Helen are able to open up with one another.
If we work together, you won't have to be.
It's the glue doing what the glue does. Helen has finally conveyed to Bob what she had been trying to do all along, helping him understand that in a marriage, they have to work together to make it work. I mean, that was a callback to their wedding ceremony. When all was going well, Syndrome made a huge mistake in going after Jack Jack. But it's all the more appropriate that when Jack Jack is falling from the sky, Helen makes the final save. Being both the wife and mother, Helen's stretching ability proved crucial in keeping everyone safe, comforted, and together, with no fear of her ever breaking.
Look at Mommy, honey. Don't look down. Mommy's got you. Everything is all right.
We've reached the grand finale. You know, I've been hard on Bob throughout this video. And look, I don't hate the guy for missing what's been taken from him. I mean, how many of us can relate to having the potential to do great things, but being told by the powers that be you can only use some of that potential, or none of it at all? As an aspiring 2D animator, I know I can. Bob is an extremely relatable character. Now, let's discuss why. During the golden age of superheroes, Bob, aka Mr. Incredible, was the best superhero there was. While he wasn't perfect, we saw a charismatic hero that had everything he could want. That is until he saves a man from committing suicide.
Mr. Sansweet didn't ask to be saved. Mr. Sansweet didn't want to be saved. And the injury received from Mr. Incredible's actions, so-called, causes him daily pain.
Hey, I saved your life!
You didn't save my life, you ruined my death!
That dude had me heated when I was a kid. After he and Helen got married, the lawsuit would take effect, and heroes would become outlawed. Remember this?
Sometimes I think I just like the simple life, you know, relax a little and raise a family.
That didn't last.
I don't understand. I have full...
15 years later, we see how much the law against heroes has affected Bob. He's gained considerable weight, his hair looks a mess, his clothes are all dingy, and he just looks tired. At home, he's disconnected from his family, not really engaged with what's happening with those around him.
Dash got sent to the office again.
Good.
No, Bob, that's bad.
What?
He finds himself entranced by what he's reading in the newspaper. This is when we are given our first hint to the disappearance of Gazerbeam.
Simon J. Palladino, longtime advocate of superhero rights, is missing. Gazerbeam.
The Gazerbeam mystery would become one of the most important events to influence Bob's character progression, and the foreshadowing wouldn't end there.
You remember Gazerbeam?
Yeah, there was something about him in the paper.
He had trouble adjusting to civilian life, too.
This was a moment where Bob needed to realize where his obsession could lead him. which is why I believe Frozone was never in any real danger, even with Syndrome hunting him. This would come back to hunt Bob, but we'll get to that. The two find themselves in a burning building to save people trapped in the fire, only to find themselves trapped in the fire too, forcing Bob to break through the nearest wall, but unfortunately, they crash landed into an even worse situation.
Oh, no. That ain't right.
We look like bad guys. Incompetent bad guys. Freeze!
Unfortunate for them, but lucky for us as we'd see one of the coolest scenes ever.
Alright, had your drink. Now, I want
I
you
know,
to...
I know. Freeze.
God, I need a Frozone movie. But Rick Dicker does a really good job keeping these heroes safe, man, because in no way should Lucius have gotten away with this. Oh, I want to mention this too. So in the art book, it's revealed that there was a scene in the film where Bob and Lucius were punching an abandoned building while venting their frustrations with how things are in the world now. Basically reliving the old days on an old building. Those plans changed, however, after 9/11. And while it was never explicitly stated, I'm sure this jewelry store scene was its replacement. It was an awesome change, but I do love the demolition site concept art. Anyways, once Bob arrives back home, he and Helen try to argue about where he'd been.
What? You knocked down a building?
It was on fire, structurally unsound. It was coming down anyway.
Tell me you haven't been listening to the police scanner again.
We quickly realize that Bob's obsession is worse than we already knew it was. I mean, even Lucius calls it sad in the car. 15 years of being held back and he was finally reaching his breaking point.
We're discussing your attitude.
He is getting mugged.
Well, let's hope we don't cover him.
We already know Bob genuinely likes helping people. Even if his desire to use his powers can be slightly selfish in regards to the safety of his family and other heroes, there's no reason to believe that Bob doesn't genuinely enjoy saving others.
What are we doing here, Bob?
We're protecting people.
Nobody asked us.
You need an invitation?
I'd like one, yes.
So when his extraordinarily evil boss threatens his job if he tried to save that person,
close the door. Get over here now.
it was no surprise that Bob crashed out.
He got away.
Good thing, too. You were this close to losing your...
Bob was absolutely justified in my opinion, even if it was a bit irresponsible. The little dude was insane. Well, anyways, we find ourselves back in Bob's office. Oh boy, dude was just torturing himself. Secluding yourself in a dark room, surrounded by your past accomplishments, I mean, no wonder he had a hard time getting over it. The artwork on the wall was beautiful though, but after being given the opportunity to be Mr. Incredible again, everything shifted for Bob. But he's got his family. It'll be tough, but he'll let it go. Yeah, nah, he's out of there. Once he arrives on Nomonison, he finally gets to be himself again, and it showed quickly. After destroying Omnidroid number 8, Bob was fully motivated again. He was happy. He started working out again, got himself cleaned up, and even his relationship with his family improved. Things were looking up for Bob, but he quickly gathered the more sinister side to Nomonison when Omnidroid number 9 and Syndrome ambushed him. After being ragdolled by Syndrome, Bob found himself narrowly escaping him. By the way, I love the solemn music in this scene. Finally, we uncover the mystery of Gazer Beam's disappearance. We see that he died, likely after fighting an Omnidroid. As Bob tracks where Gazer Beam's eyes were looking, he notices something.
Kronos?
With this reveal, Bob wants to uncover the secrets of Nomonison. When he infiltrates a hidden room, he approaches a terminal. Here he finds the answers he's looking for with the help of Gazer Beam's final save. The passcode was Kronos. Hero after hero, killed. Bob finally realized what his obsession could have led him to. He's eventually captured, but matters only get worse for him when his family has now become victims in this too.
Mayday, mayday! India Gulf 909 or his buddy spiked! Abort, abort! There are children aboard! Say again, there are children aboard this! No!
Now imprisoned by Syndrome, Bob can do nothing but reflect on his mistakes, alone. Even after presumably losing everything, Bob was still a hero. His heroism was rewarded. His family was okay, but...
Time out! What have we here?
Yeah, so now they're all captured, but at least Bob finally realized what was really important.
This is my fault. I've been a lousy father. Blind to what I have.
Near the end of the film, Bob still has trouble recognizing that he isn't in the past anymore, constantly looking to do things alone. Granted, he was recovering from thinking his entire family was dead, but Helen helped him understand why he doesn't have to think that way. And that was proven in their battle against Omni-Droid number 10. With all their collective effort, the Incredibles defeated the Omni-Droid.
Just like old times.
Just like old times.
Yeah. Hurt then too.
Yeah.
Just like old times. Well, with a character like Bob, it only makes sense for the protective father to have super strength. And you know, while the powers may have seemed like an afterthought in this video, that's kind of the point. Seeing Bob progress from an isolated dude obsessed with the past to noticing that his daughter got a new hairstyle was really cool. It's the little things. Ultimately, Bob is a character that shows you just how difficult life can be. But with this forever adapting world, loved ones around you can help you overcome any change. Thanks for the motivation, Bob.
Mr. Incredible, we need your help.
Showtime.
And that was the power of family ties. The Incredibles will always be my favorite animated film. It's so personal, from the story to the art direction to the brilliant composing. Brad Bird using his own life to tell such a fantastic story like this is what all creatives should aspire to do. I hinted at it a few times throughout the video, and in the future I'll discuss The Incredibles 2, but not the same vibes as this one. Granted, I enjoyed it, but that one certainly misses a lot of the key points that this one had, which is very surprising admittedly. Regardless, with the announcement of The Incredibles 3, I don't expect a time skip, not unless they plan on bringing another baby into the cast, but I am hopeful Dash and Violet are given more time to shine. They were some of the best moments in the original. Though part of me feels like the Disney executives are picking at Brad Bird's brain, telling him to put a super dog in the film, and if that happens, I'm out. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I am entirely grateful for the support you all have been giving me lately. I just want to keep improving because I really want to make this YouTube thing work. Do me a favor and like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you're new. I'll ask this question on the way out. Who's a character you'd like to see be fleshed out more in Incredibles 3? Let me know in the comments. And with that, thank you for discussing this classic film with me. It was truly incredible. Until next time.